to grow, travel. Now I'm really moving on top of the world. I think so. I thought so. But there's trouble in the horizon, okay? Financially, professionally, I was doing very well, but I was not happy. I was not at peace. I was not a good husband. I was not a good father. I was not a good provider. Yes, but not there. Something was missing. You know, I was missing out on my children's growing up, my children's life, in their childhood, in their growing up experiences. What was wrong? Okay. I'll show you what was wrong. And this, of course, at the time, I didn't know what was wrong. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was doing excellent. Romans 8, chapter 8, 5, 6, and 7. It says, those who live according to the sinful nature have their minds set on what that nature desires. But those who live in accordance with the Spirit have their minds set on what the Spirit desires. The mind of sinful man is death, but the mind controlled by the Spirit is life and peace. My mind, you know, the mind controls the brain. The brain is supposedly one of the most important organs in your body. But what controls your brain? Your mind. And if your mind is in the world, and mine was, I was not a drug addict. I was not an alcoholic. I was not a pornographer. That doesn't mean that I was in sin. I was a sinner. I was a sinner in many, many, many ways. First with my family. First with my God. That was the first thing. I had totally, completely separated myself from God. I didn't go to church. I didn't need to go to church. I was doing fine. I was in control. As a captain, you have maybe 180, 200. At one time, I had 400 passengers to my care, to my responsibility. That, I thought, was my world. That's me. I'm in control. I'm in control of this airplane. I'm in control of the situation. But I was not in control of my life. My life was going the wrong way. So, through all these years, of course, my mom's in Puerto Rico. She came and visited sometimes. And I did come back to Puerto Rico to visit her. Like I said, I was deeply rooted in the world, not on top of the world, but into the world. Deeply rooted into material, superficial, and a power stroke. Okay, now we're going to regress and go back a little bit. We're going to go back to 1979. And I'm going to go back to 1979 because that was a trip that I made to visit my mother on a vacation. I was on vacation. It was January. It was winter here in Georgia. Oh, by the way, I was based here in Georgia, of course. I was flying out of here. And it was winter. It was cold here. I was on vacation. My kids were in school, so I decided I'm going to go visit my mother. My mother and her husband, she had just married, by the way. My mother did not marry again until 1962. I was already 2.5 or 3 years into my profession. I was already flying. So then my mother remarried. And her husband was also, he was from Kentucky, from Somerset, Kentucky. But he had been in Puerto Rico for 40 years. He spoke Spanish, he spoke English, he worked for the Navy, he was an engineer. So he married, they got married. And they had just bought a penthouse, beautiful, beautiful penthouse right there overseeing the Atlantic Ocean. It was great. So they were redecorating, so I said, I'll just go and help them. I'm going to spend 2 weeks down in Puerto Rico. So when I went there, every morning after I got up and came downstairs, my mother was sitting there reading her Bible. And of course, being my mom, she was always trying to guide me in the right direction, you know. So we sat down, and she gave me very good advice, and she told me about, you know, this and that, and you know, how I should put it in the hands of the Lord, because I had problems, I had worries, not financially, but I was you know, into the world, and I had other things going in my life that were not the right way. But anyway, she was always saying, pray, put it in the hands of the Lord. I said, Mother, I gotta do it. You know, if I don't do it, nobody's gonna do it for me. You know. Anyway, that mentality. Over here, this is two very, you know, my mother and another woman that later you're going to find out who it is, were very influential in my life. But my mother was the first one. And God had a plan, okay? So during that visit, my mother gives me this book, okay? Streams in the Desert, in Spanish. Manantiales en el Desierto, translated, Streams in the Desert. This book was written by Mrs. Charles E. Cole, the Spanish version. I did not open this book for 10 years. I didn't even read it. I saw the dedication, probably, and that was it. I tossed it in a corner in my house. Didn't even know where it was. 10 years. Now, you'll see what happens. Anyway, did not open it for 10 years before it became instrumental in my life, a life saver. In 1985, this is God's plan. I'm not seeing it yet. I don't know. But I was flying one of the best airplanes that airline had. It was a 757. That was, the airline was the first one to buy that airplane. It was like a sports car. I loved it. And one day the office, two gentlemen from the office came and said, Philip, wouldn't you like to fly our bigger airplane, A300, the Airbus? I said, no, I like what I'm flying. They said, but the Airbus is more money and bigger airplane. I said, I don't need money. I'm really enjoying the 757. The airline was in need for pilots to fly the A300 because they were not having enough people going over the A300, and they were starting to fly coast to coast for $99 on that airplane, because that airplane was a really money maker. It came from Europe. It was the first Airbus introduced in the United States by this airline. They got 3 for $1 a year. The airline got 3 Airbuses for $1 a year, including the training on the airplane, to introduce it to the United States market. Wow. So Eastern saw the possibility because the airplane carried a lot of cargo underneath and a lot of passengers. So they said, we're going to offer $99 coast to coast from any city on the East Coast to any city on the West Coast for $99. Wow. Only carry on, because we're going to fill the airplane with freight underneath. It was a terrible flight, but they needed pilots to fly that airplane. And a lot of people were not. The Airbus was slow, big. It was an Airbus. That's what it was built for short hops in Europe. It was like a big bus, slow, low. Nobody liked it. So I'm in the sports car, and they want me to fly the Airbus. I said, no. So they tell me, they said, listen, we're going to send you to Germany, to Lufthansa, for training on this airplane. 1 month. And we're going to give you $1,500 just for your expenses, because the hotel and everything else is taken care of by us. And the exchange in Germany at that time was 3 to 1. $1,500, 3 to 1 in Europe a month. Ah, that sounds good, doesn't it? Well, I bit the hook. They got me. So I went to Germany, checked out on the A300. lousy airplane compared to what I was flying. Not lousy, I shouldn't say that. It was a good airplane, very safe, very good airplane for what it was going to be used for. I was used to a rocket, flying to the Caribbean and to St. Thomas. You can put the 757 anywhere. The A300 was slow and slow, and you get into all the weather because you couldn't climb. If you were full, you couldn't climb above 29,000 feet. So you got into every weather. But anyway, I paid the price. Now, let me tell you what happened also. They didn't tell me that with my seniority, I was not going to be able to fly that airplane out of Atlanta. I was going to have to fly that airplane out of Miami. So, here comes the second part of the God's plan. Here comes the second woman in my life. Okay. So now I have to go to Miami, and I said, well, I got to get an apartment or a room. I'll have to commute. My cousin Jeanette had just lost her husband about 6 years ago. She had 3 boys, big house. She said, oh, I've got a room on the other side of the house. It's yours. Come live with me. You can stay here. It was perfect. I said, beautiful. Okay? What I didn't know was that she was saved. She knew the Lord. She was a Christian. And let me tell you, did I give her a hard time? I'll tell you what, I was ashamed after many years after. In 1985, cousin Jeanette comes into my life. A300 experience. How I get to live with a cousin Jeanette for 6 months. For 6 months. She never gave up on me. At the beginning, one of the things I told her was, hey, stop it. Don't give me that. I don't want to be like you. Can you believe that? That's my cousin, my oldest cousin. I love her dearly. And I'm telling her, I'm going to move if you keep this up, you know. Can you believe that? But she never did. She never gave up. It took her a while. She'd leave me notes. She'd leave me cassettes. She would leave me, I tell you. And then, you know, I kind of mellowed. You know, I said, well, why not? Let me go with her. She kept inviting me to go to these other places. Well, in 6 months, my life changed. Not only accepting the Lord as my Savior, but for the first time in my life, I read the Bible. I was 46 years old, and I had never opened the Bible. I had never read the Bible. Well, not only did I read the Bible for the first time, but I started visiting different churches, prayer meetings, Bible studies, Jews for Jesus, reunion meetings, and of course, the enemy attacks that came with me accepting the Lord, which was unbelievable. And I had no idea that would happen. And she told me, she said, but she changed my life. She changed my life to this day. Because there's still more to come. And this is God's plan. How did I get to go to Jeanette and live with her? The A300. The airplane that I didn't want to fly. Okay? But I did. Took me to Miami. Took me to her. Okay. In 1988, this is the other thing in my life. You know, when you're close to a friend or a relative that you really appreciate, that you really, a friend, it doesn't have to be a relative, and you lose that person. It's hard, it's difficult. Now you can imagine, I was only child, no siblings, lots of cousins. Tom can tell you, I have lots of cousins. He thinks I have cousins in every state of the union. But let me tell you, I lost my mother in 1988. Suddenly, it was an accident. So it wasn't a long period, a long sickness where you kind of get ready for it. Or you, no, she was okay today. She's gone tomorrow. With the, I would say, it was the Lord that I'm flying now another airplane, but I'm flying out of Miami. And my mother had bought a house. They had moved to Florida, to Plantation. And they were in the process of remodeling the house that they had bought across from Jeanette, who was my cousin that brought me to the Lord. When my mother died, I was there. She had a freaky accident that she was changing some wallpaper. She fell from a little stool, broke her knee, okay? Broke her knee, that's it. She was in a cast, she was taken care of, everything was fine. The January 31st, 1988, Super Bowl night. It was a Super Bowl, 1988, January 31st. My stepfather and I are watching the gun. My mother is in the bathroom, and I hear her yelling when she comes out of the bathroom. I went over there, and she was gasping for air, gasping for air. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't breathe. So I couldn't lift her. I couldn't put. So I laid her on the floor, and I said, "Mom, what's going on?" He said, "You know." So I didn't know what to do. I said, "Oh, maybe she's hyperventilating." So I called Frank, and I said, "Frank, give me a paper bag. So maybe she could, you know, like. By the time he come back, my mother expired in my arms. Oh. But her last 3 words, her last 3 phrases was, "Jesus is with me. Jesus is with me. Jesus is with me." Wow. 3 times. Wow. Now, I mean, of course, I was already saved. If I had not been saved, if I had not been in the Lord, that's one thing that I dreaded. I didn't even want to think about losing my mother. I just couldn't even entertain the thought. But I was at peace. I mean, first of all, I was there. She died in my arms. The 3 phrases, Jesus is with me, Jesus is with me, Jesus is with me. So one more, you know, and like I said, he took her, and I know where she went. So that's, and Jeanette, registered nurse, she was there in no time at all. She tried CPR.